The House of Representatives has condemned the recent decision by the United States government to shorten the validity of non-immigrant visas issued to Nigerian citizens. Now, describing the move as unfair, harmful to bilateral relations, and detrimental to millions of law-abiding Nigerians, the House called on the U.S. government to immediately rescind the new policy, which reduces visa validity from a 5-year multiple entry to a 3-month single entry. Lawmakers expressed concern that the July 8th, 2025 policy change by the U.S. Department of State will have far-reaching consequences on business operations, academic pursuits, and family connections, particularly among members of Nigeria's vibrant diaspora community. Joining us now to discuss more on this is a legal practitioner and public affairs analyst, Atoko Oseru-Oja. How are you doing? Thanks for joining us. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome, and good morning.
All right. Let's go straight into it. Of course, let me find out from you. Now, what legal recourse, if any, right, does Nigeria have under the international law to challenge, or let me say, seek redress for the U.S.'s decision to downgrade Nigeria's visa status from 5-year multiple entry to a 3-month single entry visa?
There is no legal redress to such an action. You agree that one thing that determines a country or that separates a country from a state is the issue of sovereignty, and that sovereignty extends to the level of their territory. And for you to control your territory, the immigration policy of that country determines the level of control they have towards the level of control over their territory. So that cannot be underestimated or can be interfered by any other country or any no law internationally. But there are several laws that bind all countries based on their acceptance to domesticate such a law. A good example, like in Nigeria, if you look at Section 12 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, gives the National Assembly the power to domesticate any treaty enter between Nigeria and any other country, or any treaty they find it conventional within the regional bloc. For such a treaty to be enforced, or for such a treaty to be a law, the National Assembly has the power to domesticate it to be law. So that is in that regard. Then if you look at the reaction of the House of Reps, you could see that they could not in any way point to any treaty or bilateral, let me use the word not treaty at this time, because treaty is a more broader perspective when it comes to international politics and diplomacy. There's no where they point any bilateral agreement between Nigeria and US in terms of immigration. Though there are such agreement between countries when it comes to immigrations and control, but there is nowhere Nigeria or the members of the National House of Assembly, particularly the House of Reps, have speak to one. And in such cases, that cannot be enforceable except there are clauses to such an agreement. A good example, there are both countries like Nigeria and America enter such a bilateral agreement, and on the ground that if one party breaches such a relationship, they submit themselves to the International Court of Justice. That is not there. Then either diplomatic relationship or negotiation, that is not there. The arbitration, those are not there. So in the absence of all this I've just mentioned, there is no legal redress for Nigeria.
All right, so tell me, how might the principle of reciprocity in international law apply in the context of visa policies between Nigeria and the U.S., and could Nigeria invoke it to negotiate a reversal?
Well, you could see, for me, I think when you talk about when you talk about issue of you replicating what the other party has done to you,
yes.
If you look at the basis in which the National Assembly, particularly the House of Reps, are hanging their contest with, you discover that you now ask, do Nigeria have a similar give back to US A good example, they talked about education. How many United States, how many Americans come to Nigeria for study? The answer is 0. They talked about issue of education. How many American citizens come to medical? Yes, medical. How many Americans come to Nigeria? Do you understand? For any medical treatment, the answer is 0, or maybe is 1/100. Then let's give it at that. Then if you look at the issue of family ties, how many Americans do we have in Nigeria that their families do come to Nigeria to visit their relative? The answer is 0. So that principle may not likely hold much water. Nigeria is put in that particular position of, okay, well, we are aware that we have a trade and investment agreement that was a bilateral agreement between Nigeria and America, United States of America, which was entered far back when Obasanjo was the president of Nigeria. We're also aware of the extradition treaty. That is another one of 1935. Yes, 1935 thereabout. They talk about the air service of year 2020 during the time of Buhari that was entered. So a good example, such can be an avenue for diplomatic shift. For trade and investment, the question is, how strong can US rely on Nigeria for any trade apart from crude oil? And American can go and source it at elsewhere. Then most times we operate a dependent, that's a consuming economy. That is, we depend on the creation, we depend on other nations in booming our economy. A good example, most of the things we use in Nigeria are imported. And in importing them, we need the currency, which is the international currency, the US dollar. So you see, Nigeria is at the weak point of any step they are going to take. The only thing I think we should do at this point in time is not to look at we reciprocate. Yeah, reciprocate on what? On the fact that we will deny US citizens from coming to Nigeria or reduce it to 3 years. You look at the inflow, that's the traffic on both sides. So I think that reciprocation policy may not likely be the best option for now.
All right, so can the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs initiate what we call diplomatic protections or legal claims to, safeguard the mobility and the dignity of Nigerian citizens impacted by this U.S. Visa policy? Is that possible?
No, for legal is no, but diplomacy, yes, and diplomatic relationship, yes, in the sense that, well, we can leverage on our population. We can leverage on because another thing you should look at it, the regional bloc. Now we can leverage on our stronghold on the regional bloc. In good example, Nigeria, I would say Nigeria is one of the power to rely on when it comes to African policies and politics. Then you also talk about issue of security, military strength and all that stuff within the context of Africa and also within the context of West Africa. So Nigeria can leverage on that regional bloc influence, because America as a country is American today because the ability to have grip on the stronger blocks in each of the regional zone. So if Nigeria can play on that diplomatic level to say, okay, well, sometimes America may want to achieve a particular aim in Africa, they can leverage on Nigeria a relationship with other regional blocks or with other countries within their neighborhood to achieve such a purpose. Those are issues that can be on the table for purpose of mutual understanding. Yeah, outside that, I think what the National Assembly or what the reps are looking at is they are looking at it from a mere Nigerian political way of doing things rather than the diplomatic way of negotiation and us trading.
All right, thank you so much, Tokwo Osoroja, for joining us and having this conversation, and we hope you join us again some other time.